Imagine a world where a soldier who once led a revolution becomes a face of global peace. On July 27, 2025, the world stood still as Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's youngest leader at just 36, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. From the dusty battlefields of Burkina Faso to prestigious halls of Oslo, how did this young visionary transform a nation in crisis and spark a global conversation about peace? This is the story of a man who dared to rewrite Africa's future, and he's just getting started. Let's dive in. Music transition. When the Norwegian Nobel Committee announced Ibrahim Traoré's nomination in Oslo, the room buzzed with disbelief. A leader who seized power in a 2022 coup, now a contender for the world's most coveted peace honor? The news hit Burkina Faso like a tidal wave of pride. In Ouagadougou's Revolution Square, thousands gathered, waving green and red flags, chanting Traoré's name as if the nomination itself was a victory for their nation. A young street vendor told a local reporter, "For once, the world sees us not for our struggles, but for our strength. Ibrahim is our hope." The announcement wasn't just big in Burkina Faso. It sent ripples across Africa and beyond. In Mali and Niger, leaders facing similar insurgencies saw Traoré's nomination as a powerful validation of African-led solutions. Pan-African scholars and activists lit up social media, calling it a turning point for a continent long defined by external narratives. "This is Africa reclaiming its story," one commentator tweeted. Even the Vatican, not known for weighing in on African politics, added its voice. Pope Leo XIV issued a rare statement, praising Traoré for turning swords into plowshares, a nod to his groundbreaking policies that turned ex-fighters into farmers. But not everyone was convinced. In Western capitals like Paris and Washington, some analysts raised eyebrows. Could a cool leader really embody peace? Headlines in major newspapers called the nomination controversial, questioning whether Oslo was endorsing military takeovers. Yet, even in those skeptical editorials, there was an undeniable truth. Something extraordinary was happening in Burkina Faso, something so remarkable it caught the attention of the world's most prestigious peace institution. So, who is Ibrahim Traoré, and how did he go from a little-known army captain to a Nobel nominee? To understand, we need to go back to 2022, when Burkina Faso was on its knees. Insurgent groups had taken over vast swaths of the countryside. Villages were deserted, schools were shuttered, and families lived in constant fear. The government, riddled with corruption and dependent on foreign aid, seemed powerless to act. The people of Burkina Faso weren't just fighting for security. They were fighting for survival. That's when Traoré, then just 34, stepped onto the stage. In September 2022, he led a bold move to topple the failing regime. To the outside world, it looked like just another coup in Sahel, another chapter of chaos. But inside Burkina Faso, it was something else entirely. To a people tired of leaders who bowed to foreign powers while their communities crumbled, Traoré's takeover wasn't a power grab. It was a promise of change. Dressed in simple military fatigues, he spoke directly to his people, not as a ruler, but as one of them. "I am not here for power," he said at a rally in Ouagadougou. "I am here to defend our land, our children, our dignity." What made Traoré different wasn't just his youth. Though at 34, he was the youngest leader in the world. It was his vision. He rejected the old playbook of relying on foreign troops and aid. Instead, he called for self-reliance and sovereignty, expelling French forces that had been stationed in Burkina Faso for years without stopping the violence. He forged alliances with neighbors like Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel states to tackle regional challenges together. For Burkinabe, this wasn't just politics. It was pride. Their leader was standing up to global powers and putting Africa first. But Traoré knew words alone wouldn't rebuild a nation. He needed action, and he needed it fast. He traveled to rural provinces, meeting displaced families and listening to their stories. Unlike leaders who hide in palaces, he walked among his people, speaking their language, not diplomatic jargon, but a language of survival. He framed governance as a battle for existence, where education, agriculture, and security were all part of the same fight. This approach began to shift how he was seen. To the world, he was still a coup leader. To his people, he was becoming a nation builder, planting the seeds of a new Burkina Faso. By 2023, even skeptics started to take notice. Traore wasn't just talking about change. He was delivering it. But it was in 2025 that he unveiled a program so bold, so innovative, it would propel his name to Oslo and change the global conversation about peace. That program was called Farmers of Peace, and it's the heart of his story. Before we dive into this game-changing initiative, let's take a moment to say thank you to this incredible community. Here at Ibrahim Traoré's channel, we're dedicated to celebrating Black culture, African history, and stories of resilience that inspire the world. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and join us in amplifying these powerful narratives. Your support keeps this movement growing. Let's keep shining a light on Africa's greatness together. Now, let's talk about Farmers of Peace. In May 2025, Traoré launched an initiative that sounded almost impossible in a region scarred by endless conflict. Instead of fighting insurgents with more violence, he asked a radical question. What if the men carrying rifles could be convinced to carry seeds instead? For years, the Sahel's conflict had been framed as a military problem. Armies versus militants. Traoré saw it differently. He believed the real battle was in the fields, the schools, the villages, the places where life happens. Farmers of Peace invited over 1,100 former militants, many of whom had joined armed groups out of poverty or desperation, to lay down their weapons. In return, they received tools, training, and land to farm. Instead of prison cells, they were offered a chance to rebuild their lives and their communities. Critics called it a risky gamble, warning that these ex-fighters might return to violence. But the results were nothing short of miraculous. Within months, Burkina Faso's intelligence services reported a 70% drop in attacks in areas where the program was active. Villages that had been ghost towns came back to life. Families returned, markets reopened, and children who hadn't seen a classroom in years were back at their desks. The brilliance of Farmers of Peace wasn't just in disarming fighters. It was in giving them a new purpose. Former enemies became neighbors, working side by side in farming cooperatives. Farmers who once feared raids now share harvests with men they once called enemies. This fragile but real coexistence became a living symbol of reconciliation. For Burkina Faso, it was also a practical lifeline. Agriculture is a country's backbone, and every hectare cultivated by reformed fighters meant more food, less reliance on imports, and stronger communities. Traoré had tied peace to prosperity in a way that was both symbolic and tangible. The world couldn't ignore this. Humanitarian groups, used to handing out aid in war zones, were stunned to see villages managing their own recovery. Journalists visiting Burkina Faso wrote about fields of maize where burned homes once stood, and classrooms filled with laughter in towns that had known only silence. Policy experts called Farmers of Peace the most innovative grassroots peace model of the decade. It wasn't just a Burkina Faso story. It was a global one. In Colombia, where communities had faced similar violence, analysts drew parallels to their own reintegration efforts. In Asia, think tanks studying rural development pointed to Traoré's model as a blueprint for linking agriculture with peace. Of course, not everyone was sold. Some argued the program's success might be temporary, that reintegrating militants is notoriously hard. Others pointed out that Traoré still governs under a military transition, raising questions about democratic norms. But for the people of Burkina Faso, the results spoke louder than the doubts. Markets were buzzing, schools were open, and hope was taking root. Traoré's vision was proving that peace could be built from the ground up, not dictated from conference rooms. This idea, that peace can grow in the soil, not just in signed treaties, struck a chord far beyond Burkina Faso. In Mali and Niger, leaders began exploring similar programs, inspired by Traoré's success. Across Africa, intellectuals and activists framed his nomination as a moment of continental pride. Why should peace only count when it's written in Western agreements? They asked. Why can't Africa's solutions, rooted in our realities, be celebrated? For many, the Nobel nod wasn't just about Traoré. It was about Africa's right to define its own path. As December 10th, 2025, approaches, the day the Nobel Committee will announce the Peace Prize winner. The world is watching. Will Oslo recognize a new kind of peace, one born not in diplomatic halls, but in African fields? Awarding Traore would be a bold move, a signal that results matter more than rigid traditions. It would mark the first time a sitting African head of state wins a prize, a historic moment for a continent often overlooked in global decision-making. In Burkina Faso, the mood is electric. Murals of Traore adorn city walls, and citizens who once lived in fear now speak of the future with cautious hope. Whether he wins or not, Traore has already changed their reality. Farmers are harvesting crops where violence once ruled. Children are learning again. Communities are healing. His nomination has put Burkina Faso and Africa on the global stage, proving that peace can be grown where no one expected it. This is more than a story. It's a movement. If you believe in celebrating African resilience, Black culture, and stories that redefine history, subscribe to Ibrahim Traoré's channel now. Hit that bell icon to stay updated on videos that uplift and inspire. Share your thoughts in the comments. Does Traoré deserve a Nobel? Can Africa's model of peace change the world? Let's keep this conversation alive and celebrate a continent rising. Until next time, stay proud, stay inspired, and stay tuned.